Today, the federal minimum wage is worth about 20% less than it was when Ronald Reagan first stood here. And Tom Harkin and George Miller have a bill to fix that by lifting the minimum wage to $10.10. It's easy to remember, 10-10. This will help families. It'll give businesses customers with more money to spend. It does not involve any new bureaucratic program. So join the rest of the country. Say yes. Give America a raise.
Were it only that simple, there's a push on to raise minimum wages around the world. Obama is asking for 10-10, but even in the States, activists there are pushing for the same level that activists here are pushing for. That's $14 an hour. Where did this magic number come from? I don't know. But the idea that you can snap your fingers and push up people's wages persists. I've long made the argument that it hurts companies and that reduces their ability to hire workers. Well, Chris Spoke here at Sun News Network is going to make a different argument. He says this will lead to more automation. Chris, you think the rise of the robot worker is coming if wages keep being pushed up?
Yes, that's right. So what politicians often don't refer to when discussing the case for a higher minimum wage is that the minimum wage, when you increase it, it has a very clear disemployment effect. And this has been borne out by empirical studies. So one study actually that came out at the end of 2013 by two Oxford economists, what they did is they took a look at 702 occupations across the U.S. economy and then developed a methodology to categorize these occupations by their susceptibility to being automated or computerized, as they called it. And when you look at these occupations, those occupations that are dominated by people making the minimum wage or near the minimum wage, they're a lot more susceptible to automation. So the top three would be retail salespeople, telemarketers, cashiers. All of these, there are technological changes that are being revealed or unleashed that would make the need for labor a lot lesser, and companies will be moving in these directions.
We pulled up some of the numbers from that study, and so these are American numbers. These are not Canadian numbers, but the principle will still apply. And so you look at things like a cook in a restaurant. This is the 25th percentile, folks, just so you know. So waiters, 827. 25% of people are making this or below. Fast food workers, 818. 879 for retail sales, 946 for security guards. If you artificially push that up by the government just saying you must pay this, there will be some way to say, is there a cheaper way to do it by moving towards technology?
That's right. So this is what economists call capital bias technical change. So the higher you make the minimum wage, the lower the opportunity cost of having these companies invest in capital, in the materials and the equipment and the capital goods that make labor either less necessary or completely redundant altogether.
You just look at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's when I was young, when they had just brought out the clam technology. That's what they called it for frying hamburgers. And rather than have someone sit there and flip the burgers halfway through, they brought out a grill that cooked them on both sides. It came down like a clam. Or now they've moved to, no one gets their Coke filled by the worker behind the counter. They give you the cup. They say it's over there. You do it yourself because it's cheaper.
Yeah, and it's not just existing companies that have their operations set up, but it also makes these companies a lot more vulnerable to competition from companies that are emerging that are using a lot more of these capital-intensive procedures and processes and needing less labor and therefore incurring less labor costs and allowing them to offer cheaper prices to their customers and therefore being more competitive. So this completely changes the competitive landscape in the economy. And what happens is when politicians call for an increase in the minimum wage, what they're really doing is they're calling for an industrial policy that subsidizes this transition from labor to automation. And they should be honest about that.
You know, look, I want everyone to be doing well, making more. But if you're in a very low-skilled job, you have to realize that you're going to be susceptible to it, and if you want to make more, maybe you find a way to move up the job rankings.
That's right, and the argument most commonly used for the minimum wage is that it's an effective anti-poverty tool. But if you look at the data in Canada, 72% of minimum wage earners belong to families that are above the low-income cutoff, so that's our poverty line. So it's not a very targeted way to address those people. And then when you factor in the disemployment effect, it's even worse still, because now people that might have been able to start their climb up the ladder to greater productivity won't even be able to begin the journey, because if their productivity is not worth the new minimum wage, they won't be hired. And that's just the incentives that businesses face.
And of course, those same stats also show there's an awful lot of students who live at home with mom and dad that are also in that minimum wage.
They make up a huge portion of the market, yes.
Chris, good talking to you. Chat soon.
Thank you.